Corporate media is a festival of ignorance and propaganda. So, in order to give you a different perspective, the people's perspective, from the streets, we need your help. Help us to keep acting out by going to patreon.com/actout and support independent, non-propagandized, non-corporatized news. This week, we've got a bit of a spoiler alert when it comes to third-party spoilers, plus how the quest for knowledge and the weaving of words are building community, self-respect, and power in one of the U.S.'s most impoverished and downtrodden cities, Detroit. But first, it takes a fool to remain sane. I remember the lyrics to that song that I sung with laissez-faire before they dug in deep and strong, before they wove into my veins what I have made my own. It takes a fool to remain sane. Yes, it takes a fool to remain sane. Down this rabbit hole, my soul so weighted, how much faster can I go? My mind screaming slow. Down and down I go. I'm so damn twisted I can't find my way back home. No place to grab a hold. These slick dark walls just push my fall, and all I know is back is gone. Forward might be down for now, but up is in the cracks, the light that shines in slivered lines of where we draw our line. Where we stand to fight, the jagged edge that breaks the face of slick and smooth goons, Big Brother and his sick tycoons. The light, therefore, is not the end, it's on the sides. So on we fly, fall and trip and crawl and lift, and fill the cracks in minds with this, the light that breaks the wall, the light that keeps our burning fight, the light that stops us 'fore we write our futures over to our fright. It may seem sane to stay away from this dark hole that strips away the rosy sheen, unknowing gleam, and leaves you just like Alice, waking from a dream. It may feel good to turn your mind from all those lines that speak of crimes and call to you that now it's time. It may feel safe to let your fear pull you from the depths of here and wrap you in the swaddling clothes of empire in its desperate throes, but no, the comfort isn't worth the price. And sanity's a callous vice, when those who claim you've lost your brain are those who place your soul in chains. I'd rather be the one they name as totally insane, falling down disaster's drain, than be a fool who'll sit and stay, ignore the light and diss the fight, just to say that I remained sane. Welcome to Act Out. I'm Eleanor Goldfield, and this is your tipping point. So I want to start off today with a total spoiler alert, namely that third parties aren't. In the past few weeks, a lot of fuck third parties mudslinging has been shoved to the spotlight for the sheeple show, particularly after the conventions when thousands of voters on both sides had this to say about the Democratic and Republican choices. It then followed that people started peering past the two-party compound to see if there might be a glimmer of hope and change on the other side. Well, corporate media proceeded to throw shit at these questioning faces, suggesting that if you vote third party, your least favorite of the two chosen ones will win, making their victory entirely your fault. You'll lose all your friends, and on Judgment Day you'll go straight to the deepest circle of hell, or something to that effect. Well, let me just say, as usual, fuck you, corporate media, and the putrid political pundits that you praise. And also, here's the real story. Let's start with some recent history. In 2000, Green Party candidate Ralph Nader was blamed for the election of George W. Bush, supposedly because many progressives threw their vote away on him rather than vote for Al Gore. So did they? Well, leaving the juiciest state for last, if you look at, for example, Tennessee, Gore's home state, and Arkansas, outgoing President Clinton's home state, Gore just lost both of those to Bush. But hey, what about New Hampshire or Oregon? The margin of Bush's win is less than the votes that went to Nader. In New Hampshire, for example, Nader won about 22,000 votes, and Bush won by only 7,500 votes. Well, Democratic drones, hold your ha till I'm done here. According to exit polls, only about 47% of the Nader voters would have voted for Gore in a two-way race. while 21% would have voted for Bush, and 30% would have just abstained from voting in the presidential contest altogether. Now, that suggests that the amount of votes needed to push Gore into the White House wouldn't have come from those pesky Naderites anyway. Okay, but what about Florida? Every Democrat's favorite Benedict Arnold 2000. Well, there, exit polls showed that had Nader not been in the race, Bush would have actually won by more. And furthermore, Nader actually stole votes from both Bush and Gore at the same rate. That equal opportunist thief. So it seems that if you want to blame anybody for the Florida debacle, you might start with Justices Thomas and Scalia, who stopped the Florida recount. Or, hey, why not just blame Democrats? Yeah, Democrats. Here's a rough reality. 308,000 Democrats in Florida voted for Bush, while only 24,000 Democrats voted for Nader. Fucking A. It looks like Democrats should expend more energy on bashing their own party people for actually voting for Bush rather than trying to say that those who voted for Nader somehow in a roundabout, not really at all kind of way voted for Bush. But of course, Democrats can't do that. That would mean having to address why more than 300,000 people thought their party's nominee was less enticing than this guy. As Kevin Zeese and Margaret Flowers wrote in a recent article for Truthdig, the Democrats needed to make Nader into a scapegoat because they did not want to admit the real reasons that Gore lost to Bush. The real reasons would have challenged Democratic Party orthodoxy of Wall Street and war that still dominates the party today. Al Gore was one of the founders of the Corporate Democratic Leadership Council. He, along with Bill Clinton and other corporate Democrats, believed that taking funding from big business interests and doing their bidding was the path to defeating the Republicans. He also had a long record as a supporter of a large military budget and U.S. wars. If the Democrats admitted that their selection of a corporate militarist ticket is what cost them the election, it would turn their big business funding base against them. Rather than move away from selecting those kind of candidates, the Democrats blamed Nader for Gore's defeat and continue to this day to nominate similar candidates. And regardless of where you sit on the spectrum, if we compare Gore's viewpoints to Hillary Clinton's, there's a lot of overlap, not least of all in the sphere of military and corporate relations. So, are we set to see Nader Myth, the sequel, play out this November? Well, if you've been paying attention to the conversation surrounding Green Party candidate Jill Stein, the same plotline is already forming. A vote for Jill is a vote for Trump. The threat of everlasting damnation looms once again. And yes, that threat makes just as much nonsense today as it did 16 years ago. A vote for Jill Stein is a vote for Jill Stein. A vote for Gary Johnson is a vote for Gary Johnson. A vote for Gloria La Riva is a vote for Gloria La Riva. And that's just the point. This isn't just about going blue or green. This is about the larger point of trying to scare people into voting for the status quo when their real fears amount to what the status quo is, and will continue to be precisely because they give into that fear. It's about facts and evidence that boldly prove that anyone running outside the royal duopoly is not guilty of crowning the most evil candidate, including this guy. So truly, if it's not simply acting out of fear, why wouldn't we cast our votes outside the two-party system? Particularly if we may already have a presidential victor months before voting day. Already in mid-August, NBC News reported that Clinton had surpassed the 270 electoral votes required to win the White House. So then, if our great country has already decided on its next fearless leader, why throw away your vote on her? As Kevin Zeese wrote recently in his article for The Guardian, which, by the way, gave me the idea for this segment and should definitely be required reading for anyone of voting age, quote, "Use your vote to challenge corporate power." And while Zeese is a vocal Green Party supporter, he knows this election isn't about seeing Stein win. As he wrote to me, anyone who understands political change knows the only path to winning is losing, and losing, and losing. Historically, third parties haven't, and haven't needed to, win the White House in order to influence policy. For example, the New Deal was crafted entirely from the progressive and socialist parties, neither one of whom were actually the ones to sign it into action. As Zeese notes, the formula has been mass movement plus independent electoral party equals transformational change. By forcing their issues into the political agenda, people have broken up banking and energy monopolies, won the right to form unions in an 8-hour workday, ended child labor, and won the vote for women. In other words, third parties don't spoil elections, they spoil coronations. Their place on the ballot shows that there are millions of Americans who don't fit into the two-party paradigm and don't want to. These parties and the movements that give rise to them pull people out of apathy and back onto the political stage where we all belong, inspired by the push for change, something that neither party wants. Whatever your issues are, however you see yourself on the political spectrum, do vote your conscience, and do savor that, because I might never again agree with Ted Cruz. Do not give in to the politics of fear, the politics of shut the fuck up and get back in line. Step out of line. Use your own mind and cast your vote for the greater good, not the lesser evil. Now, let's go from questioning two-party allegiance to no allegiance, with a K. Jami Tata is a poet, activist, and mentor in Detroit who has worked for more than a decade on this principle. We pledge allegiance to knowledge. By filling in the gaping and growing holes left by public education, Tata works to bring inner-city youth closer to their own histories, and in so doing, their present, so that they may be the ones to shape their future, with knowledge, words, art, and some food. We sat down to talk with Jami about his endeavors and the powerful work of pushing knowledge and deep thought to be heard in the midst of a festival of ignorance. Take a look.
When I meet a lot of young people, they just feel disempowered and disenfranchised because they feel like they have no voice. Being in situations where they're stifled from the home situation and parents. And then, one of the reasons why we try to teach outside of institutions is that's where young people are marginalized the most. They're in a system where banking education happens and they're just receptacles and receive. And they don't have thoughts. They don't have an opportunity to express. They don't have the opportunity to create their own philosophies and speak that into existence. And also going beyond just having the philosophy and the thought, now that you have those things and now that you said those things, you can now act with those things. So it's really important to provide those safe spaces where our young people can create, write, and express themselves and get off their chest whatever it is that they are thinking, feeling at the moment. And, that in itself, to us, having value of self, that in itself is a form of just activism when you are devalued. And then being able to move forward collectively, because a lot of the young people have an opportunity just to bond with each other, and they perform together. And they do. It ends up being that they often write about things that are really socially progressive, because they see many social injustices, even outside of their personal experience, that they, encounter every day. Like police brutality has been heavy on a lot of our kids' hearts the past 2-3 years. So, they have created lots of poems around that. And then being able to speak that into existence in public spheres, and then having dialogue. And, that's been, that in itself has been healing, for them to be able to speak to these things, without any barriers, and also to do it in the public sphere where they can create and engage other people and listen and have that cross-cultural dialogue, intergenerational dialogue, and move that forward. So one of the things that, we try to always incorporate, even though it's not necessarily, I guess, literacy based, but we try to incorporate, food in like everything we do. Like, so a lot of our, we perform in gardens, we teach in gardens, and we have a lens of food justice, because we feel like, without food, we would not be. And So a lot of kids write about the aspect of, just what it means to have a food sovereign Detroit, what it means to, have access and security around fresh fruits and vegetables and things that they can eat. They just learn the basis of eating well and growing food and the importance of that. And then they take it from there and use it as a platform to speak their truth, whatever that may be. But, it's a very, and it's just interesting. Each young person has their own topic that they're dealing with or they deem important, and it allows them an opportunity to speak on it and to have courage to actually do it in the public sphere. And then we have one young person who actually a number of young people who from there developed many relationships where they got into an environmental justice movement. They got into opportunities where they were speaking across the country. They were performing across the country. Power Shift is one of the conferences they performed at 2013. It came to the city this year. And, the literacy piece, it connects to, where it connects to their heart. And then when they're actually in a public sphere speaking these things, they connect to other people when they go from there. We provide the kind of base to get them where they're trying to go.
So since you're based in Detroit, and Detroit has been, it's suffered so much since the economic downturn, and you were doing this before the economic downturn. Talk about what you've been seeing since then, and particularly with youth. I mean, they did an expose of schools in Detroit and how they've suffered, public libraries, and since what you're doing is so much focused on knowledge and literacy, have you seen a tremendous shift since the economic downturn? Talk a little bit about how your organization has weathered these storms.
Ooh wee. It's it's been it's been interesting to see the rise and fall of our school system. One of the reasons why I do what I do is because of a failing school system. I got an opportunity to really learn a lot of my knowledge and what I've gained and wisdom through, I would say supplemental education. A lot of the stuff that I wanted to learn, I wasn't being taught in the schools. And then I was in a situation where there were substitute teachers teaching for a whole year. So we didn't have teachers that were qualified truly to teach the classroom. And then we would start with one, I remember there was a walkout because we had a French teacher. We had a French class, but we had a French teacher for about a week. We had a German teacher. We had the German teacher teaching Japanese. It just didn't make any sense. I remember getting in a fight with my math teacher in algebra because he wasn't teaching things right, and it was a wrong answer. And I was like debating, and it was just like, it was a really interesting time to be a high school student when I was in high school. So, I think the year after I saw strikes, and it's interesting because there's always a teacher strike. There's like literally, if it's not every year, it's every other year that teachers are striking for more pay. So there's, that cuts the school year in half. So that's less time for the kids to actually learn. There's been so many school closings when the economic downturn happened. And then we had 2 emergency managers for our schools, not just for our city, but for our schools that tried to help, which they just closed more schools, which ended up, leaving kids to go to charters, to go outside of the school systems of Detroit. And, then some were just disenfranchised in general because there were lots of schools that were merging, and there would be like 40, 50 kids to a classroom. So learning wasn't necessarily happening in those spaces. You were trying to just manage the classroom as a teacher because that's never a good environment for a kid to learn in. So, interestingly enough, not saying I necessarily foresaw it, but it was happening when I was in school. So it was something that I've been continuously dealing with and just trying to provide that space where if you're not learning inside the schools, you can learn. There's an opportunity to learn what you should be learning outside the school and receive that same quality education. I really want, there to be more opportunities for basic things like, kids having access to the libraries at our hours, kids having access to a study hour where they can just study and, and to me, having a lunch that is awesome, that you are really enjoy, gives you energy to be in class and focus on studying.
You really are picking up where the schools are failing, whether that be teaching kids about food or just teaching them about art, because those are the first things that are cut. It's
Yes.
music, it's art, it's all the creative things that really doesn't that don't teach you what to think, but teach you how to think creatively and critically. And I mean, is that something that you'd like to sort of model a school after, or do you feel that your place is really in this sort of like smaller community sort of space?
So in my spare non-time, I run an arts nonprofit as well. So, we just actually acquired a space 2.5 months ago, and one of my students asked me, "What should we name it?" And I was like, the Can Cultural Center. So it is we have literacy happening. We have the radio station. We have we wash and prepare our food for market there, but we have drums there. We have African drums where kids can just come and play. We have keyboard. Hopefully, I will be setting up a computer lab. I, do IT in my non-spare time as well. Uh, so, and one of the things about the poetry program, like the kids after the 6 to 10 week program, they slam, and one of the prizes they get is a computer. So it's either a laptop, a tablet, or a desktop computer. So they have the capacity to, do all the things with technology. Because one of the reasons why I wanted to offer those as prizes is, there was a big technological divide with, not only our kids, but just, inner city neighborhoods in comparison to other spaces. So, having access to a computer and the internet, or just one or the other, was a big deal. And it still is, especially when, kids are learning how to text speak. And then that's how they speak, and that's how they type, and giving them an opportunity to have the computer that allows them to, if nothing else, have a full size keyboard to actually type words. So that those little things are important, but also I think having that, the computer lab, having the drums, having a whiteboard, and just having a place to be, it's becoming a little, cultural arts school in a way. So I need way more resources, that being instructors and administrators other than me, to actually make something like that a reality. I'm good at community organizing, but I've never ran a school, so that would be a whole new adventure. But I'm open to it.
So finally, I just wanted to ask, because I heard about you through the article that talked about fighting gentrification, and going back to what Detroit has suffered under national corruption and income inequality. Do you touch specifically on these issues of gentrification, systemic racism, and classism, or do you basically just give people the knowledge and the skills to talk about it themselves? Is there, do you kind of workshop that, or how do you address those issues?
Yeah, I don't directly touch on those. I give them the skills to, think for themselves and figure out what's going on. I think, but I tackle the issue every day, because one of the things I had to do was, one, move back into my neighborhood, because I worked in my neighborhood for a very long time, over 10 years, but I was living in a neighborhood across town with similar challenges. I grew up in both the North End neighborhood of Detroit and Brightmore neighborhood of Detroit. Very, they are labeled blighted. They are labeled, places of chaos. They are labeled, drug infested. That has changed over time with the drug situation, but they're still labeled as blighted. But I see beauty and assets all abound in our communities. But, when it's labeled, when our communities are labeled such things, they don't receive resources. I had to move in back into my neighborhood because I'm like, not only am I working here, I need to be here and be present every day because I see the beauty. I see community gardens where people don't see community gardens. There are like 20 gardens in our neighborhood, but if you just roll by, you only see the big three. And being able to be like, yo, these are present and having people there is really important to folks coming in and trying to take over the space. If no one is maintaining the space, then gentrification can happen in that space. So I'm giving the kids that opportunity to learn the basics of literacy, to connect to other things that they really care about, but hopefully to stay in their neighborhoods, to claim it and own it and keep it clean, keep it built up, keep events happening, and it be for those long-term residents, not those new people who just coming in, they reap the benefits of what may be happening or what is not happening because it's so blighted and there's nothing happening and so many barren fields. Let me go build something. But if we're already building on it, if we're already using it, that can't happen. So, I directly and indirectly, but with the kids, I just teach them to be aware, to be conscious, and to go explore, to be, open to learning and to never close the door on anything, any opportunity, anybody to speak to, share, and just what you gain, do it in your community. Don't, we teach value for self first, write for yourself, do this for yourself, and then, externalize that value. And that's really important because the creativity is huge. The creation energy, you own what you create. And a lot of people in the neighborhoods don't own where they live. They don't own anything. But, I own this poem. I own this book. I own this CD. I can own a home. I can own a car. I can own land in my neighborhood. Those are foundational pieces and foundational values that I'm hoping that will grow into larger things. So I instill it indirectly and I battle it directly every day.
To learn more about Jahmy and his work, check out noallegiance.wordpress.com. Again, that's no with a K. And that will do it for this week's Dose of Dissent. Thank you so much for watching, and please do share this with all of your friends, foes, and people that you don't know. Check out the last slide to see the sites mentioned in this week's show, and be sure to follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube. Till next time, good night and act out. And real quick, to keep independent, non-corporatized media like this show going, donate at Occupy.com/donate. If you'd like to donate directly to Act Out, visit patreon.com/actout.